Have you ever spent hours crafting the perfect message to your ex and only receiving okay, yes, or just silence? In this video, I want to share with you the message you need to send, the things you should not send, and that's very important because you're not the only one in that case. I spend my days helping people in your situation, trying to reconnect, trying to rekindle things with an avoidant partner. And this is what we will do today in this video. But first of all, the things you need to know about avoidant attachment style, especially in how it will impact the communication. So avoidance, we have a fear of emotional closeness. What it means is that yes, we crave connection. We want to be attached to a primary attachment figure, but there's always this inner fight between I want the relationship, I envy the relationship, but when I'm in a relationship, when I'm too close to someone, it's overwhelming and I withdraw. And that sense of pressure will make them withdraw. That's why in communication, you need to be careful of what you send, how frequently you send your messages, and assessing where they are in terms of their mindset, in terms of also emotional regulation system. The thing also, the second element you need to understand is the timing or the sense of urgency. When you have an anxious attachment style, very often, actually, let me know in the comment section if it's true, if you can relate. There's often this sense of urgency. Someone would text you, you need to reply right away. Someone will ask you something, you need to solve it right away. For avoidant, it's not that we procrastinate, even though sometimes I procrastinate. It's more about, okay, I have this piece of information and I'm going to detach myself from it and I'm going to analyze. And when it comes to intimacy, what happens is that avoidant will put it on the side. They won't feel that pressure, or actually this pressure will be different because as we discussed, when there's any form of pressure on them, we put things on the side, right? We just which is a coping mechanism. In a way, it's helpful for them because it helps them cope with strong emotions, but it's not helpful in the sense of building a relationship or intimacy because it prevents them from connecting with people. So that's the thing you need to understand around how they receive and how they communicate with you. Another element is also about logical. Sometimes people, and I think I see a lot of nasty comments on my videos about avoidant, that we have no feelings, we're heartless, etc. The thing is, it's more about logic. It's more like, this is the situation. And really what happens, and the common mistake that I see with people who have an anxious attachment style, is that they want to talk to their heart, right? They want to connect through emotion, which is, by the way, the right way to develop intimacy in a relationship. But for avoidant, that's not necessarily where they're comfortable. And so you need to adapt in terms of communication. I'm not saying like you should change yourself or have any form of boundary, but in terms of communication, you need to adapt to how they communicate. In other words, to speak their language. It's only when you speak their language that they will be able to feel safe, and then you can repair and rekindle the relationship if it's possible. Okay, so it's very important to understand those things around the emotional element, the pressure, around the timing, around the logic versus emotion. Because usually, if you have an anxious attachment style, you tend to do the opposite of what you need to do. And therefore, they'll sense a disconnection and they'll feel default to that's not the right relationship. That's not the right partner. And they'll get back to you around, I can't make you happy. It's not about you. I love you, but I'm not in love with you. All this crap that you can hear if you don't speak the same language as them. So it's very important to understand their psychology. And that's why my videos hopefully will be helpful. And that's why also I help my clients on Telegram when they have a hard time figuring out, because it's very hard to have a view on what's working and not. And have a look in the description if you want to work with me. So the best message to send, and obviously this is something you need to adapt because I don't know your ex, I don't know your style. Obviously, I'm pretty sure you asked ChatGPT, but I give you some some pointers. Hope you're doing well, no pressure to reply. Just wanted to check in, no expectation. I appreciate the time, wishing you the best. So these are actually good messages to break no contact. You don't need to send a letter. You don't need to send a very long email or a very long text. At the beginning, you need to start with, again, low emotional investment. Short and sweet, very logical, positive, okay? I'm not saying that you should never ever discuss about your feelings or about the pain or about the hurt or about your experience of the breakup, but don't do it at the start. Especially if you're about to break the contact, this is about just nudging them, telling them you're alive, and just showing them that, okay, I'm not going to pressure you. I'm not going to ask a response right away. I'm not going to ask you to be emotional at this stage. You need to bring them on the journey. It's frustrating. It's a pain. But if you want to get back together, or if you want just to assess whether it's the right relationship, you have no other option than to bring them on that journey. So also understand that you have to step away, and that's why there's always two parts on the process, on how I work with my clients. There's an element of the communication with the ex, but there's also an element of personal development. Because if you're in that mindset of validation, trying to get that closure, try to get that word or that sentence that will finally make you feel better, you're going to have a hard time. It's going to be painful. So it's working on those two aspects at the same time. And accepting that, they might need space. Very often, it takes way longer than we expect for them to reply. Or usually end. There's also an element of you're disappointed by the message. You spent hours crafting these two sentences and they reply, great. So it's always finding that balance and that nuance on this. Now, what not to send? So you have an idea of the worst thing. I miss you so much. Please talk to me. Why are you ignoring me? I deserve an answer. I know you're scared, but we need to fix this. It makes sense for you to send those messages because they are true, right? They reflect your own experience. The problem is how it's received. So as an avoidant person, if I receive I miss you so much, please talk to me, I would feel not the drive to address and fix and help, but I feel like it's too far from what I can provide. And therefore, and that's what happens, and therefore, I'd rather not speak and ghost you. Okay? And from your point of view, that's going to be very tough because you feel like after we had all those months or years, he or she's able to ghost me and forget me and whatnot. It's more about the pressure. So again, understand, bring them on that journey, build up that emotional intimacy, but start very, 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 very low. Another thing that doesn't work is to trigger jealousy or test their reaction. It will backfire. The high level rule is the less you push, the more likely they respond. Now, obviously, you don't want to be waiting next to your phone for the next 10 years for them to react. At some stage, you need to fix yourself some limits. It's very important. If you had a meaningful relationship, and if you know this relationship has a future, if you have enough certainty around that, they will get back to you. They will have an opportunity to discuss things. Usually that's what happens. You have an opportunity to work things out. That doesn't always work, don't get me wrong, but you will have an opportunity. So remove this element of pressure and assess, especially if it's been a while, whether you are not perhaps fighting the wrong fight. Again, if you are not sure about this relationship, if when I say like you have enough evidence that it's the right relationship, have a look in the description. I put together a quiz specifically designed to help people analyzing an anxious avoidant relationship and assessing whether getting back with this avoidant partner is something realistic. So I looked 3 dimensions. I don't want to look into too much detail, but you'll have a report detail on your answer, giving you also some insights and advice on what to do next. Now, why avoidants react this way? What we do is we use deactivation strategies. So as I said at the beginning, we all have a need to be attached to what we call a primary attachment figure. That's how it's called in attachment theory. The thing is, when things are overwhelming, because we were taught to self-soothe, when there's a bit of pressure, we isolate ourselves and we suppress emotions. So for me, for a very long time, emotions was happy, sad. And even sad, I didn't allow myself to be sad, okay? Because being sad, crying is a sign of weakness, and I don't want to show the world that I have those weaknesses or have this sort of vulnerability. And so that's the first element. And so they deactivate, so they push away the relationship because of the pressure of the emotional closeness that we discussed. Now, the thing is, when you try to reconcile things, it's always finding the right balance, because yes, you want to be in a relationship, therefore you want to be building interdependence with this person. But the thing is, for avoidance, being in a relationship is a loss of freedom. You know, if I commit to this relationship, it means I will lose a sense of my freedom, of my decision making. I'll have to negotiate things, etc., etc. So the thing is, what we need to do is to help them on that journey realize that it doesn't have to be only negative. It doesn't have to be only about compromise, and that you can design together. That's what we do with my clients. We design the right relationship. Sometimes when we do the work and we craft the ideal relationship for you, we realize like that person is too far from what I need in my life. And some of the non-negotiables are not met. And therefore that means you need to walk away. But when you have established the right framework, it's very easy to walk away, right? Now that's the problem in those situations after a breakup. We don't know exactly what we want. We are convinced we need to get them back because we are in love with them, but that's not necessarily the right decision. So again, that's a journey. That's a process to go through. What happens all the time is that it's about creating the sense of safety. I call it the secure base. It's not a term that I came up with. It's from John Bowlby, the famous psychologist who came up with this attachment theory after Mary Ainsworth. So the idea is you create the right environment for the ideal or optimal relationship. Okay, the optimal doesn't have to be perfect, but it's like good enough for your partner to react in a secure way. When you do that, your partner will feel safe, and that sense of safety will make them open up. That's what happened with me. It was very hard for me to open up, but as soon as I realized that I could open up and it was safe for me to open up and discuss things, and there was no repercussion, the same, trying to fight some of the limited beliefs that I built when I was little, of like, if you are vulnerable, people will criticize, will make fun of you, right? So when you start doing this and saying like, okay, let's take a risk. Let's be vulnerable, let's open up. And you see that actually what you anticipated that something would be negative will be actually something that will reinforce the relationship. That's a game changer. But in order to get there, again, we bring the person slowly but surely. Managing the space, managing the timing in terms of how they process things, but also, and be realistic of whether it's going in the right direction. And that's also the part that's quite difficult is, okay, I'm making the effort, I'm working really hard at creating this secure base. What's going on them, right? Are they showing me that they're responsive? Because the thing is also, it's not an if actually. When you create the secure base, the person will see it. Then it depends on them to react, to change, and be inspired. Like, you're the role model. You're showing them it doesn't have to be dramatic, hectic like it was when we were together. We can make it work. I'll show you the way. And yes, you have to be the first one, and that's unfair, but that's the way it is. You show them the way, then they will respond, and they will have to decide if they respond. And that's not your decision, right? That's very important. And if you present yourself, you do the work, and after a few months, usually the work that I do with my clients is 3 months. There's no response. There's no progress. You're the only one making the effort. That's not the right relationship. And in that case, it's very easy to move forward. I didn't follow the slides because I think it was very important to discuss this. Very quickly on how to increase your chances of response. Casual, short, neutral. showing that you're secure, emotionally stable. Avoid any sort of blame, guilt tripping, emotional intensity. That will backfire all the time. That's guaranteed. If you do that, that's going to backfire. There's also an element of control. I talked about safety. If they feel a sense of control, they will feel safe. And as I said, if they don't respond, if they ignore you, even though you've done the work, you respected enough time, you went to no contact for sufficient number of weeks, that's a sign as well. That's a form of closure. So that's the thing. Unfortunately, in those cases, there's a lot of things you can't control, right? The work they're doing, the people they're seeing, how they process the breakup, etc., etc. Right now, there's only one thing you can focus on is your healing, right? That's the only focus. The problem is that most people, they focus 90% on the ex, 10% on the healing. So you're watching this video, hopefully you're like, okay, let's take action. That's the point of the work that I'm doing. And trying to have this mindset shift of, hold on, the body's in their court, I'm on my path. So find the right support. Maybe it's about watching my videos, reading Attached, reading my book, reading The Body Keeps Score, which is a very good book as well. Hold Me Tight. Oh, I mean, there's plenty of books. Do the work, focus on that. That's the only thing that matters. That's the only thing you can control. And by doing that, you'll sense, you'll feel a sense of progress, which will help you move forward and gain clarity. Now, should you even reach out? Now, I'm going to be clear. You will be, as I said, disappointed by their response. If you message them and you have expectations from their reply, you'll get disappointed. So you have to do the work of being detached. And sometimes it takes weeks, sometimes it takes a few months, because you need to reconnect from a place of strength rather than like, I need you, right? It's just like you're testing the water. So the shift is, I'm messaging you because I want to be sure that you are not in a relationship, that you haven't forgotten me, that you want to get me back. 2, I'm connecting just to assess where you are, because I want to be sure that I'm about to move on because you broke up with me, but I just want to give you a second chance to prove me wrong. That's the shift. Okay? And it takes a bit of time for you to shift from, especially if you have an anxious attachment style, because we seek validation and reinforcement, etc. And some people don't deserve a second chance. I don't know your case. And again, if you want to discuss your case personally, have a look in the description. We can book a session, an assessment session with me, and discuss your situation in detail, because every situation is unique. But it's important for you to make that assessment, and people, maybe some of your friends will tell you the same. Maybe I will tell you the same. So it's about, again, gaining that clarity around this. You will be disappointed by their response. That's for sure. That's a guarantee. What would be, perhaps could give you the motivation to move on or insight? Maybe share with us your story, any question. As I said, if you want to work with me and discuss this phase of like, I need to communicate, what do I send, etc. Let's do it on Telegram. If you want to join Telegram, book an assessment call with me so I can assess whether it's a good fit, because sometimes people call me or they join Telegram and I feel it's not the right fit. So I'd rather you calling me first. We make the assessment, we discuss your situation, we detail the roadmap together, and then we work on a daily basis on Telegram to help you and guide you. If you have any, as I said, share your question, story. Hope that was helpful. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you next time.